So let me just be honest and say the burnout, it's real. You see my beans back here behind me. They're what they do is, if you've never really grown pole beans before, they will put on a huge flush in the beginning, and then I will pick a whole bunch of them, and then they'll kind of go through a pause phase, I guess you would call it. They just kind of take a little bit of a break where you get a few stragglers here and there, and then they put on all of this lush new green growth, and you get a second batch of beans. And the second batch is never quite as good as the first, and I've been harvesting off of them, and I have probably enough to do another canner load here coming up. But after that, I think these are going to get torn out. I'm in Oregon in the Pacific Northwest, and we get a lot of rain throughout most of the year except for summer. We tend to have pretty dry summers, and I like to get the garden and everything cleaned up the best that I can before the rains come, because it's just kind of disgusting when it gets all like mucky and wet and you're out here trying to clean up and you're soaked and the weather's cooler. If you know, you know. But anyway, yeah, I just wanted to encourage you that if you garden, and even on a small scale, I gardened and I worked full time, and at the time I had small children. I had burnout every year about this time. You just kind of have pushed yourself so hard and done so much that you're kind of just ready for that break that winter brings you, and I'm there. And it's okay. I just want everybody to know that it's okay if you're feeling it too. There's no shame in the game. This is just kind of how it goes. So I'm going to work on getting some of the nicer zinnias cut, and I'll dry them, and then the rest are just going to go to my compost pile to make some good soil for next year. So my farm stand did not get opened this year, and what has resulted is I just didn't have time to focus on the flowers that much. I have been selling a lot of my tomatoes and peppers and things like that on Facebook Marketplace, and that's been going well. But look at this little bee. He's so precious. He hasn't woken up yet this morning. But you see how like all of the zinnias in here, or I shouldn't say all, but most, see how they're kind of at the end of their life and they're going to seed. This is not one of my favorite varieties. It came in a packet of seeds like this, which are supposed to be doubles, but you always get some odd stragglers here and there. But yeah, I'm at the point, honestly, I'm ready to rip them all out. I probably won't. It's a nice cool day. I don't know if you can, there we go, I'll show you up there. We have an overcast day, so the weather is very nice right now. But I need to come through here and I need to deadhead, cut these way back so that it prevents powdery mildew from forming. And then you can see my snapdragons, they're all kind of blown out as well. And snapdragons are prone to getting rust on the bottom of their leaves, which is kind of like a speckly orange. I'll put up a picture if I can find one, but it's kind of like a speckly orange rust fungus, and it spreads very rapidly. So I really want to keep that from happening in my snaps this year. But as you can see, this is a copper atriplex, and you see how it's kind of fading to that amber color up top. That's because it's going to seed, and it is a pretty prolific seeder. These are all volunteers from last year. I hadn't planted a single one this year, and I had several that came up, and I even pulled a whole bunch out. And to be really honest with you, this is kind of hard for me even after over, gosh, what's it been, 25 plus years of growing. The end of the season, even though I'm burnt out, it's hard on me to cut out some of the stuff that's still growing, but I know it creates a lot less work for me later on before the frost comes. And like the single variety of zinnias that I showed you, it's not really one that I prefer to use in bouquets anyway. And normally I try at the beginning of the season to just take those out, because all I end up doing is nothing but deadheading them throughout the season. So the ones that are singles that I definitely am not going to be even drying anymore off of, I'm just going to go ahead and take the whole plant out. Hi. How's my baby? Come here. Come here. Everybody wants to see you. Come here. Come over here. Come over here. Hi. How's my girl? Crazy girl. Oh, careful. Careful, careful. All right, go get your mother. So unfortunately, my snaps are getting rust. So I just wanted to show you, if you've never seen it before, this is what it looks like. See the little kind of rusty brown spots, and they form under the leaves first, and then eventually they will affect even the little, I don't know what you want to call them, the little crowns or these little leaves that come or that are attached to the bud of the flower. So I have to work on getting these all pulled out. And then now that I have thinned this section, it takes a while, but you can see how much more room there is in here for the zinnias to have some airflow. And down there, I already have a little bit of powdery mildew starting on those leaves. So I'm just going to have to give these a real good thinning. I'm seriously taking out any that I don't really like. I like to leave them as long as possible for the bees because, as I showed you, they do like to sleep on here and it is a good nectar source for them. So I will leave plenty for them to enjoy of these. And then also, when I cut them off, you will see that I leave the base in the ground. And I do this because it doesn't hurt anything, and it's actually beneficial because it gives the worms something to eat over the winter. And I have a very vast population of worms underneath this weed mat because every year I leave the stems in the ground for them to feed on. Just a little tip for you. So we are going to take a little tour through the garden just briefly before we move on to other projects that I did. Now this is a type of Thai basil. It's a little bit spicier than regular basil, and so I'm just going to clip these plants back. I planted them rather late compared to when I did my other ones, so this is actually their first main growth. But I am going to clip all the plants. I got those in my basket. Now this is my tricolored sage, and if you've watched some of my previous videos, I did pick and dehydrate some of this. But this year I didn't get a whole lot of the tricolors. You can see that little creamy white there. Only on a few of my little stalks did I actually get some periodically here and there. But I gave my mom a whole bunch of this for some sausage recipes that she was going to be doing, so I'm going to dehydrate some more. And this is the 2 climbing pink rose bushes that I started from cuttings. You can see all the rose hips starting here. And I did a video on making rose water and rose infused witch hazel, and that is the bush that they came off of. And you can see there, those are starting to turn their orange color for fall. I do have some really pretty happy stragglers still blooming, and I'm just enjoying those at this point, leaving them on the bush. And over here, this is a big clump of rose hips that are forming, and I have made a lot of rose hip water and syrup, and I have that canned. So I'm going to wait till these mature into their reddish orange color, and I will probably use these in fall or maybe some winter wreaths. Now this as well, if you have seen previous videos, I started the season with pruning these and fertilizing them, but you can see how now a lot of them are turning brown. That's because I didn't have any drip tape on them this year. But if you can see, I still have a few that are looking pretty, so I'm hoping they'll flush into that burgundy color and I'll be able to use these for crafts later in the season. Now this is the raised beds by the dog pen, and the deer have been getting in here and munching my flowers. That's why it looks terrible like this. And this bed right here is where I had my black adder dianthus, and they actually destroyed all of that. The one pumpkin that actually survived for my granddaughter, and this one, the deer, squirrels, mice, something gave it a good chew because it was hanging outside the netting. But you can see I have powdery mildew starting on the pumpkin leaves, so I'm going to need to get those out and in the burn pile. And now we're going to go down to our phase 1, where I have all of the flowers and a good portion of tomatoes and peppers. And this was done before I actually pruned all the zinnias, but I just kind of wanted to show you what it looked like before I even got started. You can see the snaps are shedding everywhere. They're all blown out. The garden just kind of is overgrown at this point. But these little snaps down here, I really like these. They're called Rembrandt, but they're shorter, not really so great for tall cut flower bouquets, but maybe in a vase. My husband calls them little firecrackers. And over on this side, the straw flower, I'm just basically cutting these and drying them. And this is Status. And I just wanted to show you how pretty some of the double varieties of the zinnias are. And this is what one actually looks like right before it goes to seed. It gets very full. This is part of the Queen Lime Red and Orange series. These are some of my favorites. I just think they're so pretty. And this is the Queen Lime. They just have such pretty variations on them. Now this is my copper Atriplex. This is what it looks like before it starts to go to seed. But I found when I dry it, no matter at what stage, it sheds. So it's best used for cut flowers. This is Celosia or Coxcomb, and it is the brain variety. And this was supposed to be green, but it was yellow. And this is Flamingo Celosia. Some of it's starting to go to seed. And this was one of my vintage Texas plume celosias. And for some reason, this one got huge and puffy, so it wasn't anything I could use in bouquets. Now, my basil, I'm going to pick some more of this to go with the Thai basil that we cut earlier. But I had to cut this all back. And you can see the pile of dead over there and a pile of dead here. And I'm actually going to bury that in some of my raised garden beds just for fertilizer for them and for the worms. Now I got my basil picked and all in the dehydrator. Now zinnias, this variety is single and I love this color dried, so I actually cut all the petals off, put them on the dehydrator sheet, get them dried, and then this is how pretty they turn out. And they make really fun confetti for tables, or you can use them in potpourri. I just love them. So one of the things I want to do this morning is harvest some of my raspberry leaves for teas. And raspberry leaves, if you didn't know, have medicinal purposes. I did a video earlier, and I can link that down below, where I pruned these. And most of these are ever-bearing golden raspberries. And then some of them, as you can see up here, are red raspberries. And these are also ever-bearing. I get a spring and a fall little crop off of these. And you can see the ones that are dead in the center. Those are the ones that produced new shoots last year for the fall crop. And they do the fall crop, then they do the spring crop, and then they die back. And you can see these ones right here that are dark green. They are actually ones that grew after the spring crop was about finished. These started growing, these put on the fall crop, and then they will be the ones that put on my first spring crop next year. So I'm going to eventually be cutting out all of this dead stuff to get rid of it because it won't produce anymore. But for this morning, I'm just going to be harvesting some of the raspberry leaves. All right, so this is the stem that grew after the spring crop of berries, and it will be again my fall producers. And some of them will produce berries, some of them won't. Most of them do. This one doesn't look like it has any buds on it, so I'm going to take quite a few leaves off of this one because it's not needed to support the plant for putting on berries, and they're all going to fall off this winter anyway. So let's get a few of these off of here. And the ones that have 3 nice leaves on them, I'm just going to take them off right at the edge, and then when we go in the house, we'll reduce these even further for the dehydrator. And I have quite a few that have been munched by bugs. And I think I have enough on my whole section of raspberries here where I can get some nice pretty leaves for the dehydrator. And I also have these volunteers coming out of the ground, which I don't want there. So I'm just going to pull all of those because those leaves look really nice. Some of these on here, if you can see, let me pull this one off. This time of the year between grasshoppers and there's another little bug, I can't remember what they're called, but they just chew the bahoogies out of my leaves. And then the little birds like to hide in here and they poop on a lot of my leaves. So I'm just trying to be as selective as possible to get the nicest, cleanest leaves that I can. Now I brought them all into the house, dumped them into the sink, and I'm going to give them a wash simply because there is dirt. Like I said, the birds frolic around in the raspberry patch, and even though there's no pooty on any of these, I still want to go ahead and get them cleaned off so that they're nice and clean for use for later. So mostly until the water got full enough in the sink where I could just kind of give them a good swishing wash, I was just washing them one by one as the sink was getting some water in there. Then I'm putting them into my salad spinner, which I absolutely love for when I wash herbs. And I'm going to get those all wrung out so I can get as much water off of them as possible before I get them put into the dehydrator. And now at this point is when I start cutting the individual leaves off. It's just easier to leave them all on the stem while I'm washing them, so I don't have little leaves sticking to my fingers as I try to get them out. But I'm just going to start stacking them on the trays, and you can stack these fairly snugly together because as they dehydrate they shrink, so I don't have a whole lot of trouble. Oh, and drop it in the sink, why not, It's always something, isn't it? So anyway, I'm just going to keep doing this until I get my tray full, and then just continue to work on each individual tray. And this is what they look like when they're dried. You can hear how crispy they are. And I have a great big jar that I'm just going to put these into, and it's going to give me room to keep adding to it as I dehydrate more. But I don't like to break them into smaller pieces until I'm ready to use them, so that as much of the good properties stay as possible. Now the next day I decided I was going to plant some spinach and some lettuce for fall crops. And this one came free with some seeds that I got. I've never grown it before, but we'll see. And then butterhead, I absolutely love this. I saved it off of an actual plant that I got from the store. They sell them with the roots on them, and I planted the root, grew it up, let it go to seed, and that's where the seeds are going to come from. Now lettuce seeds are pretty tiny, kind of like a carrot seed, but they're lighter in color and they're almost airier, I guess you'd say. But I'm just going to plant a couple in each hole. I don't really need a whole lot. I kind of try to stagger and do succession planting. So plant a little, and then a week or more later I'll plant a few more, because I can't eat 15 heads of lettuce all within a week. But if I have good germination with these, I'll probably just give some to my mom, or just grow all the lettuce and give them away to some friends and family. And these ones, they are pretty shallow, so I'm just covering them lightly with dirt or my potting mix. And then the same thing with the butterhead lettuce. The seeds on these are pretty tiny too. They actually look very similar to the other ones, so if you didn't know which was which, you'd never know the difference. I actually put labels in these, and again, not that it makes any difference, because regardless of where I plant them out in the field, I'm going to eat them. So it's more important, I guess, if I'm selling the little seedlings, which I probably will next year in the farm stand. But these also, same depth requirements. And then the last thing we're going to do is the spinach. And these are almost a little more of a round seed if you've never grown spinach before. Almost reminds me of similar to cilantro. But I didn't have another little 4-pack up here. I just had this little 4-inch pot. So I'm just going to sprinkle a whole bunch of seeds around in here. And then when they start germinating, at that point, I can thin them out a little bit, transplant them into their more individual containers before I get them put out in the garden. And these like a little bit deeper. The lettuce ones were about 1/8 of an inch, and these like about 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to push these down to about that depth with my finger and then ruffle the soil over the top of them. And I'm going to get a watering tray. After I get my labels, I'll put in each one of these. And again, like I said, doesn't really matter because I'm going to know what they are once they start growing out in the field. But for good measure, we just stuck one in. And then I'm going to water them in. I had my soil pre-moistened, so it doesn't take a whole lot to get these back to where they should be for getting them to germinate, and I'm going to let them sit until they sprout. And lo and behold, 3 days later, I have sprouts already. They're just so cute and happy. I always love it when seeds start emerging out of the soil. And then the next day, all those Italian plums that were in my last video on the Every Bit Counts challenge series, I got a bunch of Italian plums from my mom. So I've been trying to eat through some, and today I'm going to get a whole bunch on the dehydrator. So I just cut them in half and take the seed out. They kind of have a natural little crease on them, and that's where I tend to cut. And then I don't put these in citric acid or anything. It doesn't seem to matter. And I just lay them face down onto my dehydrator sheet. And we're going to get those loaded and all dried. And this is what they look like when they're done. And because of the sticky nature of the juice inside the plums, it makes everything really sticky. Like my little top sheets stuck to the bottom tray. And then I had to actually bend the little sheet that I have here in my hand just to get these off because they were so sticky. I haven't really figured out anything I can do to make them come off easier. You know, you don't really want to grease it because then that kind of contaminates and causes bad things you don't want when you're storing them for drying. So if you have any tips or tricks, let me know. But we're just going to get these all peeled off. Here's what they look like. See how flat they are compared to how puffy they were when we put them on the dehydrator. And this dehydrator, again, it's my favorite, and it dehydrates way faster than my Nesco. And I think this took about a day and a half total. And I got these all put in. So to end off this week, I'm just going to leave you with a very pretty scene of the sunrise this morning. It was very foggy, a good indicator that fall is coming. And I hope you all enjoy the rest of your week. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I will see you next time.